So before we start, I wanted to show you what camera gear I was using. So for my camera body, I recently bought the Sony a7 III last November. Prior to that, I was using my Canon 760D or Canon T6i, and my only lens, the Tamron 24-70mm f2.8. As you can see, you could shoot wide shots with a 24mm, and you could also get that depth of field effect with a 70 and 50mm. So the first photo that we are going to edit is the houses on stilts in Fengwang, China. So what I do first is I crop it into 1:1, so I would know how it would look like in my feed. Then next step is to change the aspect ratio into 4:5. This is what I usually use when I post on my Instagram. Try to lower it a bit. So the next step is the temperature. This photo, I'm going to lower the temperature down a bit, and the tint, I'm going to increase it over 10. 11 sounds good. And exposure, I'm going to minus the exposure and try to bring on the contrast. And for the highlights, I usually lower my highlights to -50 or more, depending on the lighting. And for the shadows, let's increase it by 48. Whites, also increase the whites. And for the blacks, lower the blacks a bit. And now we leave vibrant saturation alone for a while and go to tone curve. So for the tone curve, I usually do a normal S-curve. So this S-curve is what I usually use to most of my photos. The tone curve is one of the most crucial parts when I edit. We move on to the HSL sliders. For the sliders, I usually just move it around and see which fits best. It's a matter of trial and error, just experimentation. For the saturation, we increase the reds and the orange for the vibrant orange to pop out. That's what we want to achieve for our final look. And for the luminance, I usually boost my luminance up. So we're gonna boost most of the luminance here. The reds, orange, yellow, aqua, we'll increase it too. Yeah. Decrease the saturation of the blues, and I think that's it. We move to the split toning. Again, it's just trial and error. You just move around to see with what highlight or shadows fit best. And for its saturation, I usually don't go over 10. I usually choose like around 5 or 6 for the saturation of the split toning. For the shadows, we move it around again. I think around 70 would be best. As you can see, we are almost getting the colors of the final look. We are almost there, guys. We are almost there. Now for sharpening, we increase the amount a bit and usually increase the color too. Next is the transform lens corrections. So don't forget to check on the constraint crop box. Usually I increase the distortion, but for this photo I think it's perfectly fine. Just increase the verticals a little bit. And we move to the camera calibration. I usually increase the blue primary saturation. Now we move on to the selective tool. The selective tool will help us achieve our look. So we click invert mask and there we go. We got those blues simply by using the selective tool and decreasing the temperature in the area of the water. So this looks better. Now just play in with the shadows and the clarity. Now I'm gonna return the clarity to 0 and use another gradient tool, selective tool, which is the gradient tool. So we simply decrease the clarity to get that dreamy vibe with the mist. Now we add in some vignette. Now one more gradient tool above. Change everything back to 0 and just decrease the exposure a bit. Now we decrease the saturation for the roofs a bit, and maybe the last selective we're gonna use is another selective in the middle. Increase the exposure and invert the mask. Now as you can see, the one inside the radial filter is much more brighter. We're just now gonna decrease the exposure a bit for the whole photo because I think it's too bright. And for the last, probably the last step, is the vibrance and saturation sliders. For most of my photos, I usually increase the vibrance and decrease the saturation. Decrease it by -7. Again, just play with the sliders. I think we're almost done. A few more tweaks in the camera calibration. Usually the saturation and I just increase the saturation or decrease the saturation. I really don't change the colors because I want to achieve like the natural color. The photo on the left is the original photo I posted on Instagram, and the photo on the right is the photo we edited just about now. And now this is the unedited photo. So that's the unedited, this is the edited. This is the one on Instagram. I think they look similar. So I think that's just about it. I hope you learned something on this photo editing video, and let me know if you have any recommendations on the next video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace!
Awake all night, I need you awake all night.